Y'all don't know me, and if you're smart, y'all keep it that way. Names make people real, and I'm not sure I want to be real anymore. If I use mine, y'all might look me up, and then they'll know y'all looked. It's better this way. I'll tell y'all what happened, then you can pretend it's a story. I did that for a long time, pretending. It worked until the ceiling opened like paper set over a candle and the night fell through into my room. It was a Monday, 2:13 a.m., the numbers burning red on the clock across the room. I'd been awake, flipping the pillow to the cool side, feeling that sleep was on the tip of my mind. Then the hum arrived, thin at first, a high-tension line in the air that made the window glass shiver in its frame. I sat up. The hum thickened. The air grew heavy, not hotter or colder, just dense, as if something unseen had poured into the room and was pressing down on everything at once. The light was colorless and bright and somehow clear. It didn't splash across surfaces, it seemed to strip color from them. I could see the veins under my wrist skin, faintly blue, as if I were lit from the inside. I tried to swing my legs to the floor, but my body wouldn't obey. Panic came in a cold wave. I tried to shout, but my throat had shut. There was no sound in the room except the hum and my heart climbing a ladder inside my chest. Then the ceiling folded. That's the only word I have. It didn't crack or crumble. It folded in soft planes that bent at impossible angles. And beyond it was not the attic, not rafters, but a deeper dark that pulsed like a living thing. The hum swelled. I thought my teeth would rattle free. I felt myself rise, not lifted by arms, but pulled, like iron filings toward a hidden magnet. The bed swam away under me. The world turned inside out, and then I passed through the gap, like a thread pushed into the eye of a needle. Everything went soft. There was a flavor to the air, metallic and a little sweet, like licking a battery. I tried to hold my breath, then realized I wouldn't breathe in at all and didn't need to. I wanted to kick and claw, but I couldn't feel my arms or legs. I wasn't a person. I was a thin red line stretched tight through a tunnel of light. When the tunnel let me go, I was lying on something that molded to my back as if it had always known my shape.
Don't picture a silver saucer. Don't picture hallways or hatches or blinking panels. What they bring you into, he's in a place, the way a room is a place. The walls breathed. Sometimes they were metal, cooled, rippling with the run of brushed grain, but then I'd blink, if I was blinking, I still don't know, and I'd see capillaries pulsing in translucent tissue. The ceiling swam, ballooning soft, then tightening as if the structure were exhaling around me. Light came from everywhere, but also from nowhere. It had a temperature, skin prick cold without wind. Each pulse of illumination thrummed through my bones. It made my molars ache. They were there. 3 at first, tall, jointed in too many places. They had no eyes, but they saw, and I promise y'all I'd understand that sentence if y'all ever feel that kind of attention. Their faces were smooth ovals, seams under the surface hinting at movement that never quite happened. When they turned their heads, it was like a mirror picking up a distant glare. No eyes, and yet a focusing that made me want to cover myself with something that could block attention at a soul level. The slab under me changed. The material welled up in 4 places, flowed over my wrists and ankles and hardened just to the edge of pain. My fingers flexed once, reflex or prayer, and then the slab tightened. I tried to scream. I couldn't open my mouth. Panic sharpened into that glassy clarity that makes you notice single tiny things, like the bead of sweat moving in a curved path along your cheekbone. I watched it arc up, not down, and float away in a clear sphere. I realized then that gravity had been dismissed. One of them extended an arm. Not extended, it unfolded. The limb unscrolled without joints, without sinew. From its end, a cluster of clear needles unfurled. I saw liquid inside them, dark blue with a kind of pearly sheen that made my stomach lurch. The needles drifted down. I could feel them before they touched me, pressure like a low tide pulling at the meat behind my belly button. When they pierced me, everything slowed. Pain came as a bell struck underwater, distant then surrounding. My spine arched. The restraints refused me. I had the sense I was screaming and that the scream wasn't making a sound, but the vibration with it turned the light brighter and the hum thicker. The one with the needles did not move. The needles did. They went in at shallow angles, a dozen stings blooming fire in their wake. One skeeted under my ribcage and I felt a cold foreign presence rest against the quick thud of my heart. A second figure leaned over me, face blank, the surface quivering like a drumhead. I felt something push into my forehead, no touch but pressure in my skull, a long finger kneading a bruise inside my brain. Images tore open. My mother stirring a pot of chili the winter my father left. My dog on the last day we had him tilting his head as if to agree to the appointment. The first time I punched a clock at the warehouse and told myself this was temporary. Each memory arrived too bright and too close, and with each one the needles adjusted, deeper, wider, then drawing backward in a steady pulse. A pump, a siphon. I pictured aquarium tubing and heated myself for the association. Mundane, childish, useless. They said something then. No mouths moved, no air stirred. The message threaded through my bones like current. How do you feel? I couldn't answer in words. Every attempt to assemble a sentence broke apart. What traveled out of me was bigger and rawer. The heat flare of terror, the pinprick white of humiliation, the betrayal of my own body reacting in little helpless ways I could feel and not control, the rising certainty that I would die of fear if they allowed me the dignity of dying at all. You left me. They took it. The hum shifted as if the vessel were swallowing. The third stepped closer and set its hand, glove smooth, cold, against my sternum. Its palm was oval, bigger than mine but thinner, with a slight give beneath that felt like fluid under membrane. The hand warmed. My chest warmed beneath it. The hand brightened. Under my skin, colors woke in my organs. Honey yellow for liver, dim coral for lungs, a haunted blue for my stomach crawling with unfamiliar little constellations. I didn't see this with my eyes. I saw it like the way you're suddenly aware of your heartbeat when you run upstairs. Inside and undeniable. They were reading me, and in the reading, I was being rewritten. The needles withdrew as one. The points left behind burned like solder, cooling in my flesh. The taste flooded my mouth, clean and empty, like breathing after a thunderstorm. The hand left my chest. In the skin beneath, something fizzed. I cried then, not Ellie Jag tears running pictorially down a hero's cheeks. I shook. I sobbed with the loose, helpless sound a child makes when pain and fear have braided into a rope and turned your body into a bell. The sound shamed me even as it forced its way out. They didn't pause. I pressed my tongue hard to the roof of my mouth until it hurt because that was pain I chose. We are quantifying your limits. They pressed into me. You are communicating adequately." The slab changed temperature under me, cool to feverish. Pinpricks lifted in my lower back, a comb of them, then moved in a slow stagger up my spine. At each place the comb rested, tendrils threaded inward, and a numbness blossomed that felt like being erased a letter at a time. My toes belonged to someone else. My knees were ideas. At the base of my skull, the tendril stopped. A pressure found the notch where my neck met the back of my head and pushed until my vision whitened. Tears floated now in a loose constellation above me. I wasn't alone in the room anymore. I don't mean the three. An audience gathered that I couldn't see but could feel. Presences just outside the perimeter of my senses, crowding in, hungry not for flesh but for sensation. My panic flared. The hum swelled. Something answered my panic with an echo of fear that wasn't mine. The room filled with it. It rose in terrible harmony, a choir of fear studying itself in a mirror. I'd begged, not words, supplication stripped of language. I offered bargains I didn't even understand. If they let me go, I would never tell. If they let me go, I would dedicate myself to telling everyone. If they let me go, I would volunteer to come back. If they let me go, I would die quietly where they put me and spare them the trouble.
"We are almost done," they said. "Do not decay yet." The needles returned, but now they were different, wider, with ports along their shafts. A head floated into my peripheral vision, blank and featureless. The new needle slid into the soft hollow just above my hip bone. A pressure bloomed. It didn't feel like injection or extraction. It felt like rearrangement. Tissue slicked, nerves strobed in white. Something folded inside me that I knew, without knowing how I knew it, would never unfold the same way again. I tried to thrash. I tried to stop breathing to see if I could force him to intervene. The slab refused my body all choices. It breathed for me in even contemptuous sips. The audience leaned closer. I felt them at my skin. Their attention had taste. Ozone, dust, the faint copper of a penny on the tongue. "Adequate," they said. "We have what we need." The restraint softened. The slab liquefied around my shoulder blades, and I sank through, through a membrane that snapped shut over me with a wet whisper. For an instant, I was weightless and cold nothing. Then I was standing barefoot in corn stubble under a sky the color of a bruise.
Dawn hadn't broken. It had only looked like it was trying. A thin violet bled at the margins of the earth. My breath smoked. My feet burned with cold. I took a step and my ankles nearly gave, joints confused after no time or too much time had passed. The field was one I recognized in the way you recognize the posture of a stranger. Something about the slant of a fence post, the silhouette of an elm leaning as if listening. I was a mile from my rental. It took me 20 minutes to cover the distance, stagger, shivering, spitting a taste I couldn't get rid of. Inside, I went straight to the bathroom and turned on the light. The person in the mirror is a sight I will never forget. The confirmation that what you hope is madness has instead marked your skin with its handwriting. My eyes were shot with bursts of red and ringed in yellow. The whites looked like skimmed milk. A thin brown line traced the path of my bottom ribs, too straight to be a bruise, too new to be a scar. My abdomen was stippled, 12 points in a shallow arc, no bleeding, no swelling, as if I'd been pricked and sealed in the same breath. Behind my right ear, a small lump had risen under the skin, hard and smooth, like a pebble swallowed by flesh. I pressed the lump, and felt a low thrumming there, like a mosquito you can't swat because it lives in your blood. Later, I found the ceiling above the bed had a ring the color of cigarette ash. When I pressed it, the plaster didn't give. When I sniffed my finger, it smelled faintly of rain. My clock still said 2:16 a.m. I showered until the water ran cold. I covered the mirror with a towel when I couldn't stand my own eyes. I tried to sleep in broad morning daylight and woke shouting twice, then stopped trying and sat at the kitchen table with my hands wrapped around a cup of coffee I didn't drink. My phone buzzed, and I jumped so hard I hurt my neck. The text was from my boss. Could I cover the afternoon shift? Kid called in sick. That okay? I typed yes with fingers that felt borrowed. At urgent care, I told him half. I said I woke up with unaccounted for injuries. I said maybe I sleepwalked. Maybe I fell. The nurse's eyebrows rose when she saw the neat line across my ribs. They took blood, they took urine. A doctor with coffee on his breath palpated my abdomen, then ordered imaging for the lump behind my ear. Calcified cyst, he said later. Then, when I didn't look reassured, he softened his voice. They're common, usually nothing. I wanted to tell him I could hear it. Instead, I said, shouldn't a cyst be quiet? His smile looked practiced. Let's keep an eye on it. I kept an ear on it, and it kept me company. A rattle in the walls of the house only I could hear. At night, lying on my side, I'd get the angle just right, and the hum from the lump would line up with something outside. Maybe distant power lines, maybe. And then for a second, I'd hear a chord. And in that chord was a shape. And in that shape was the feeling of being watched with love. Not human love. A patient, possessive attention that made my scalp prickle.
By the third day, I couldn't look at the sky. A patch of blue would widen, and something in me would shy like a horse, and my neck would cramp with the effort of not tilting my head back. The ceiling ring over my bed seemed to darken by degrees. I covered it with painter's tape and 2 sheets of paper. The edges curled. At night, the tape fluttered in a wind that wasn't there. I started putting salt in the corners of rooms because a forum said it helped. I unplugged the microwave and the television. I put my phone in a tin lunchbox and covered it with a book. I took showers in the dark because the sound of the fan made rhythms I recognized from a place that was not a place. People noticed. My sister texted, "You good?" I typed, "Yeah, tired." She thumbed back a line of emojis that looked like a string of lanterns, and for a second I thought, she knows. She's warning me. And then I laughed, and the laughter broke, and I pressed fists against my eyes until stars burst there. Work was a salvation until it wasn't. The warehouse was another kind of hum. Forklifts beeped, plastic wrap rasped. The radio in receiving had a broken volume knob, and the station drifted if someone walked by too close. The drift coincided twice with the rattling in my ear. For a second, the music went thin. Over the thinness, a voice whispered, "Adequate," and the words scraped me like a nail down the back of the heart. I threw up in the unisex bathroom, then stared at the poster by the paper towels that said, "If you see something, say something." I thought, to who? I splashed water on my face and stared at myself in the pitted mirror with the vandal's penis etched in the corner, and tried to decide if my pupils were the same size. That night, I slept without dreaming for 2 hours, and I woke so relieved that I cried. Then I realized
I had been asleep with my eyes open. The ceiling paper had fallen. The ring above me glowed faintly, the color of storm light. It didn't cast light. It emitted it the way a fish emits a smell, saturating the space near it until the air itself tasted wet. I put the paper back up with duct tape and sat on the floor with my back to the bed until dawn whitened the blinds. 3 times I stood, went to the kitchen, and stood with my hand on the knife drawer. 3 times I let go and drank water that tasted like memory.
I promised myself I would never tell this part, but if I leave it out, you'll think the rest is misinterpretation, stress, the brain doing what frightened brains do. So I'll tell it, and y'all can decide where you want to set your belief. On the 6th day, my sister drove me to a woman she knew who helped her after a car wreck. Nightmares, a smell she couldn't handle at red lights. She's basically a therapist, she said, plus hypnosis. The woman had a tidy office attached to her house, soft carpet, diplomas, a wooden bowl of wrapped peppermint candies, a peace lily that looked happy. She asked me to describe what had happened. I said I couldn't. Then describe what you remembered describing, she said. It would have irritated me if she hadn't meant it kindly. We agreed on a hand signal. If I lifted 2 fingers, she would stop. You're always in control, she said, as if to argue with the week I'd had. She talked me down onto a couch and spoke in that steady, always landing voice some people have. She told me to count backward, then forward, then to picture a staircase and pick a step and tell her what the railing felt like. It was a trick to keep a corner of you anchored. I picked a wooden banister, smooth and shiny with a nick at the second post. My brain invented it with thirst. She said, "Where are you?" I said, "In my bed or on it." "Is anyone with you?" The hum. And then my throat closed, then opened again. "The air is full of it." She said, "Let's just notice it. Let's get curious. What happens next?" I watched it happen in 2 places at once, in the past and in that tidy room. The ceiling bulged into a white balloon, and then it unfolded like a book being skimmed by a fast reader. "I'm leaving," I said. My voice sounded like someone else's phone on speaker. "Do you want to?" "No." "Can you stop it?" "I can't." "Breathe. Hang on to the railing, okay? Just notice." I told her about the slab, the needles. I cried hard and apologetically and wiped my face with the back of my hand like a kid. She gave me a tissue and I held it like an instruction I didn't understand. "Who else is there with you?" she asked. I said, "The 3 and others around the edges." "Can you hear them?" "They don't talk," I said. And then I laughed, and the laugh broke into something that wanted to be a scream. "They say everything." "What do they say?" "They say adequate." "They say, how do you feel?" "They say," I stopped. My fingers twitched. "What do they say?" she said. "Careful, soft." I pressed 2 fingers into the air. "Stop," I said. "Please, stop." She did. We breathed together for a while. She asked if I wanted to come back or push a little farther. I said I didn't know which would kill me faster. She said, "Let's set a boundary. You tell them they don't get to come into this office. You tell them this is yours." I told her I didn't think the words would mean anything to them. "Then you say it for you." I said it. It felt like putting a sticky note on a floor. "Do you want to see how you got home?" she asked. I said yes, surprising both of us. We went back into it. I narrated walking in the field, the shape of the horizon, the crunch of frost, the ache in my feet. When I got to the bathroom mirror, my voice stuttered. I said, "They changed me." She said, "How do you know?" I said, "Because I remember not being changed. Because there are things in me that weren't there and other things that are missing, and because I put my hand to the lump beyond my ear, because of the metronome." The what? The ticking of something else's time. We stopped after that. She gave me a list of grounding strategies that sounded like instructions for staying alive under an avalanche. 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, 1 you can taste. Practice. Practice until your body believes you are still on Earth. When I stood, the room tilted. I grabbed the back of the couch. The hum in my ear aligned with something outside, and for a moment the peace lily rustled, though the air was still. I put 2 fingers up without meaning to. She was a kind woman, patient, put her hands on her knees and said, "There you are. Take what's yours with you when you go." That night, I never turned off the lights. At 2:13 a.m., the hum found me anyway.
You don't count these experiences the way you count days. I'd already lived 1,000 nights since the first, even though a week had passed. So when the second began, I knew it by the way my body recognized an old song before the first note. This time I didn't leave through the ceiling. The light came flat through the bedroom door, slid along the floor like water, and climbed up the bed legs. It touched the mattress, and my muscles liquefied. There was a second, just one, when I thought I could throw myself out of the bed onto the far side, tug the blanket over me, make a house inside a house, and hide like a child. Then the light was under me and in me, and I was a string again. They allowed me a moment of awareness and transit. I saw the house from above, a dull house slice of it, and me, a gray shape inside. The ring on the ceiling had left a stain I hadn't seen in daylight. It looked like something's open mouth. I arrived on the slab. I had enough breath to say, "Please." A hand placed itself over my face. No weight, just heat, and the words puddled away. They didn't ask me how I felt. They knew. Pain arrived right away, practical and unadorned. The needles were fewer but wider. One went into the soft triangle above my collarbone. One threaded behind my jaw. When it lodged, I felt it from my teeth to the hinge of my ear. My eyes watered. Tears buoyed up and hung above, a small star field that reflected me back through each droplet. Each reflection was slightly different. In one, my mouth was open in a silent O. In another, my eyes were shut. In a few, my face was peaceful. I hated those versions for betraying me. "We will calibrate," they said. "We will refine your profile." I tried to say, "Why me?" It came out as the thought of a mouth moving. "Because you are." "Because I'm what?" "Accessible." Rage lit, fast, bright, useless. "Pick someone else," I thought. "Pick someone who deserves it." We do not measure deserving. We measure response. They opened my chest without opening it. The hand that had scanned me before warmed again, and the honey yellow, coral, haunted blue returned in my awareness. New colors joined. A sickly green thrumming at the base of my skull, a ribbon of bright white along my spine.
a faint bruised purple in my gut where rearrangement had taken root. They pushed at the purple. Pressure built. I sobbed like a failing engine. My fear turned itself inside out. I stopped being afraid of dying and became afraid of living through it again. Somewhere outside the bright, the audience pressed close, eager, patient. They were learning me the way a hunter learns a path, step by step, twig by twig, until what remains between the hunter and the prey is the inevitability of meeting. When they were done, they slid a final needle into the lump behind my ear. It kissed the exact center of the hardness and the hum it sang. For a second I heard, not words, but the shape of the idea of words, my own voice among theirs saying, "Adequate." They let me go the way a hand lets go of a balloon string, and I drifted down through the anatomy of the house to my bed, to my skin, to my name. When I woke, my phone said 2:19 a.m. The duct tape on the ceiling had bubbled. The corners lifted and settled in a silent breeze.
After that, I stopped pretending I still had a life and began inventorying what was left of it. The list was shorter than you'd think. I had a body. It was not entirely mine. I had a job. It required a body. I had a sister. She loved me. I couldn't bear her face when I tried to say the words. I had a lease. It expired in June. I had a lump behind my ear that made a small, polite sound at the edge of thought, like a fork set gently on a plate. I found other people online. They spoke the same way I now did, with precise hedges around unbelievable statements. A man in Utah posted pictures of a lattice of tiny burns on his back, regular as window screen. A woman in West Virginia described the audience. I threw up into the sink on the third floor at work and wiped my mouth with a folded sales sheet. An old post from 2009 explained the ring on the ceiling as a circle left by a distortion aperture, and I laughed until my ribs hurt because even our words were guesses, placeholders for the shape of what we couldn't hold. A late-night show did a segment. Two experiencers sat in soft chairs under lights and spoke carefully, while a host half smiled. The kind of smile you give a friend after their breakup when you hear them explain they had seen signs. When one of them said what they want is information about pain, the audience made a small collective sound that tried to be laughter and failed. I turned the TV off and sat in the dark with the tin lunchbox on my knees and thought about the ship not as a place, but as an organism, and us as the microbiome that walked into its mouth and out again with a little bit of it inside us and a little bit of us inside it. I put my hand behind my ear and pressed until the hum sharpened, and I told myself I had put my hand there and I had pressed to try and apply ownership.
The doctor wanted to remove the cyst. At least biopsy it, he said. It's probably nothing, but it's not behaving like a cyst. I wanted to ask what behavior he had in mind. Quiet, compliance, ignorance of its own aliveness. But I nodded, because nodding is what people who want to be helped do. He numbed the area. The needle with the anesthesia made me flinch. "Sorry," he said, his breath coffee again, or maybe I had only ever met him at times like this. "It's a weird spot. Lots of nerve endings, he mumbled. He made a small incision. It didn't hurt. The pressure did. I could feel the movement without pain, felt the tug of my skin being asked to be bigger than it was. He paused, hummed a doctorly hum. "Huh," he said. "What?" I asked, the word through the numbness. "It's encapsulated," he said. "That's not abnormal per se, but—" He trailed off. "You sure you never had any kind of implant?" "I'm not sure of anything," I said, and heard the plea in it. He worked in silence for a minute, then made a small sound of satisfaction. "Got it," he said. He lifted his hand, and I saw what lay in the shallow metal dish. It looked like a seed wrapped in translucent membrane. A pale thread coiled around it like a clever vine. As we watched, the thread tightened, and the seed shivered. "Is it—" I started to say. "It shouldn't be doing that," he said. He put the dish under a small lamp. The light brightened. The seed's surface darkened in patches, then brightened. A slow pulse. My own pulse stepped to match it. I felt the room shrink. He looked at me. I looked at him. "I'm going to send this to the lab," he said in a brisk breath. The overhead lights flickered. The lamp popped. The dish hummed and the seed pulsed in time with the hum. I felt something at a pitch below hearing turning to look. The doctor put the dish under a metal dome to carry it down the hall. "I'll be right back," he said. He wasn't. Not then. Not with the same eyes. 3 minutes passed on the wall clock. I stared at the paper landscape covering my shoulders and thought of the ceiling ring at home and the notion that maybe circles keep track of other circles. Footsteps in the hall. Voices. Too many of them. A loudspeaker crackled. The door opened, and the doctor came back with 2 others. One nurse I recognized. One man in a suit I did not. The dish was gone. The dome was not in his hands. His hands were very empty. "Everything all right?" I asked, because I'm a person who asks that even when I know the answer. The doctor said, "You're good to go. Cheerful as static. We'll call you in a few days." He didn't meet my eyes. The man in the suit did, and his eyes were empty like the spaces in winter trees. At home, the ceiling ring had grown, not bigger, deeper. It had the look of a pond in winter that is frozen and then been covered with snow and then hollowed and then covered again. If I stood under it, the hum behind my ear aligned with something above me so exactly that my jawbone sang. I didn't sleep that night, and I didn't sleep the night after. On the 3rd night, at 2:13, the hum arrived with the punctuality of a train. The ceiling did not fold. The floor did. The bed sank an inch. The lamps bent their light toward the ring. The room held its breath, and the air made room for something else to come in without displacing any of what was there. Then the ring rippled, not down, but inward. And I understood that the point of a circle is not the line, but what it promises. I stood under it. I raised my arms. I cried without sound. "You have adapted," they said. "Have I?" I asked. "Adequately." "What do you want now?" I asked. There was a pause, and in the pause I heard the audience lean forward. "We want to see what happens after," they said. "After what?" "After you live with it." The ring softened. The ceiling became just ceiling. The lamps straightened up. The hum behind my ear dialed down to a domestic appliance. I stood alone in a room I could name and hated for how it had been returned to me, altered by the knowledge of what it could become. I go to work. Some mornings, the radio finds a thin station from nowhere, hissing like rain, and I turn it off. I smile at the woman who runs the coffee cart and who always gives me a free muffin on Fridays. I throw the muffin away when no one can see me. It tastes like a memory I don't want. I talk to my sister on the phone. I say, "I miss you." And she says, "I'll come visit." And I say, "Soon." And we both pretend the word means something other than when the sky is empty. I tell myself I am not on a schedule I did not choose. I tell myself they have taken what they needed. I tell myself I will not go back. Some nights I fall asleep on the couch with the TV murmuring, and I wake at 2:12 with the sense that I have been paged. I take long drives on back roads where the horizon is only trees and farmhouse roofs, and when the road crests and the sky opens, my hands tighten on the wheel and I breathe through my nose in a measured count until the view narrows again. I find new routes to old places that keep me among buildings. I understand cities now, how they are a spell humans cast against the widest parts of the heaven. I keep the peace lily alive on my kitchen counter. I talk to it sometimes. "You're doing great," I tell it. "Adequate," I whisper when the new leaf unfurls. When strangers look at me too long on the train, I angle my body away. Sometimes they're just people. Sometimes they have the hollow patience of weather systems. I don't test which is which. The lump behind my ear is gone where a doctor made it go, but the rhythm remains, the sense of being kept in time with an orchestra I can't see. At odd moments, it syncs with the beat of a distant engine, a humming fridge, the rattle of heat through ductwork. And in those alignments, I feel a sweetness that terrifies me, relief at being part of the pattern. I pull myself out of it panting because that's where ownership blurs. You want one more thing, I know. You want me to tell you what I fear most. I have said pain, and I meant it. And I will mean it when it comes again if it does, but beyond pain lies a worse worry. It is not that they will take me again. It is that if they don't, I will start to miss them. Because terror, repeated, is a lens worn thin enough to become familiarity. Because I have trained against my will to feel the weight of their attention as proof of my being. Because when the ring in the ceiling does not breathe and the night is only night, a piece of me paces in its cage and asks, "What now?" I haven't told anyone that part. I'm telling y'all, stranger, because names make people real, and namelessness might keep you safe. Or maybe it makes us both less real, and therefore less interesting to any watchers. It helps me to imagine that. You want proof? A scrap? A curiosity? I'll give you what I can. On my ribs, the thin brown line you could mistake for a healed knife mark goes warm when storms roll in. It hums a little, like distant bees. On cold mornings, the 12 points on my abdomen pale into a pattern. If you squint your eyes, it looks like a constellation I can't find in any book. When I ask my phone to listen to the hum behind my ear and show me the nearest match, it gives me a frequency without a name.
I sleep sometimes. On the good nights, I dream ordinary dreams about losing my shoes or showing up late to a thing I don't actually care about. On the other nights, I float in a place that is not a place, and I feel the audience leaning in, and I tell myself a story about a boy who once walked into a mouth and came out again and grew a garden and learned the names of his plants and never looked up. Sometimes the audience grows quiet, as if considering. Sometimes the quiet is a grace. Sometimes it is a countdown. I am trying to live with it. That is the experiment now. That is the part they said they wanted to see. If they are watching, I want them to understand something that language almost fails, that endurance is not consent, that surviving is not the same as agreeing, that a person can be adequate and still be a person, that ownership can be reclaimed in inch-wide gestures and in the way one tends a peace lily and in the way one tells the truth into a room and leaves the door open afterward. I kept hearing the sky breathe. I hear it still. I am breathing back. If you are listening in the dark, if you hear the hum come into your house, if the air grows a weight and the ceiling makes a promise out of a circle, I have no charm to offer you. I have this only. Push your tongue to the roof of your mouth and remember the feeling of your fingers on a wooden railing with a nick in the second post. Name 5 things you can see. Name 4 you can touch. Name 3 you can hear. Name 2 you can smell. Name 1 you can taste. Tell yourself you are still on earth. Tell yourself you are adequate. If they take you anyway, come back if you can. Tell someone. Tell no one. Tell the peace lily on your counter and watch it turn to the light like a person listening for music in another room. After you live with it, you will find that after is the longest word. I'm learning to pronounce it. And if some night the ceiling folds and the ring opens and I go through again and the hum says my name, as I told you, names make people real. I will say mine back. I will say it to remind myself who is speaking. I will say it despite the needles and the cold and the audience and the pearly blue fluid and the voice that is not a voice asking me over and over, "How do you feel?" I will answer, terrified, human, here. And if they say adequate, then I'll know I am still telling the story the way it happened, which is the only kind of true we get.